My dear Fleetwood community, I am reaching out to you today to share my conflicted feelings as we approach Purim. I'm excited for Purim. It's not too often that Purim is on a day where most of us will not have to go to work, and we're free to celebrate the entire day without fear of a work email, a phone call, without having to go to the hospital. I've been listening to Akiva and Tova singing their Purim songs at the top of their lungs, practicing making noise by Haman. I'm looking forward to watching them and our other children. I assume they'll all be standing around the bima together and making noise whenever they hear the evil antagonist's name. I'm looking forward to our Purim Day party, where we'll all have a chance to come together, enjoy brunch together. I hear rumors there may be some liquid luck being served as well. And to be able to watch our kids as they show off their Purim costume, as they parade around in our social hall. And I look forward to going to be with my family later in that day and enjoy what should we call the second Purim Suda with them as well. I'm really looking forward to Purim. However, as excited as I am for Purim, I'm also acutely aware of the incredible, difficult circumstances Israel and Jews worldwide find themselves in. We all know of someone who's been impacted by the war. We all know of someone who has faced an anti-Semitic experience in the last few months. Thankfully, most of us cannot even begin to imagine the incredibly difficult Purim this will be for families who unfortunately will be celebrating for the first time without their fathers, without their mothers, without their sons, and without their daughters. Try as we will, as we might, we cannot even begin to comprehend the Purim the hostages stuck for months under Hamas's tunnels will experience. These conflicted feelings, my happiness, my excitement for Purim, and thinking about what's going on in Israel and around the world, have been bothering me for quite some time now. The answer to this conundrum I already knew. We already discussed this. We talked about this on Simchat Torah when we first began hearing about rumors about how terrible of a massacre happened in Israel. We already know that we will not let terrorists win. They will not change our way of life. It's Purim, and we will therefore celebrate. But these words that we've been repeating for some time now have begun ringing hollow. How much more can our people take? As we stand imminently ready to declare victory over Gaza, our northern neighbor inches closer and closer to waging war. As we accurately predicted, strong bipartisan support held by our allies immediately after October 7th has slowly begun to wane. As I originally wrote this, I was reading at the same time of Israel's recent siege of Shifa Hospital, where Hamas terrorists have once again taken refuge, and I dread the next round of anti-Semitic support by people we once thought of were friends, accusing us of the loss of innocent life caused by Hamas terrorists. I'm reaching out to you now, not simply to share in my depression, but to experience the hope I felt as I was thinking of the unique nature of Taanit Esther this year. Taanit Esther is, after all, a misnomer. The original fast Esther declared on the Jewish people was over Pesach. The year of Haman's decree, the Jewish people did not partake in the Leil HaSeder. Pesach night, instead of eating matzahs, they fasted. After 3 days of fast, Esther then approached Achashverosh, requested that he and Haman come to her party, and as we know, of course, the rest is history. It was only approximately 11 months later, a month before Pesach, that the Jewish people were able to save themselves by launching a defensive war and killing those who planned on harming them. And so, Taanit Esther, as we commemorate it, is not a mark of a day that a terrible event was supposed to happen. It was not when Esther originally asked the Jewish people to fast so Achashverosh will not execute her when she dared enter his inner chambers. but rather it is the eve of a day of celebration. It is the day before Purim. It is the day before the Jews launched a defensive war and won. This is actually reflected in the source of Taanit still. All other fasts marking tragic days, Yom Kippur is its own category, all the other fasts are referenced in Tanakh, in Nach. Taanit Esther, however, is not. It is simply a minhag be'alma. It was probably maybe referenced by the Gaonim, probably first referenced by the Rush, by the Rabbeinu Tam. And therefore, because of this, the Hagot Machatzit HaShekel, he's a perush on the Mordechai, is found in the back of the Gemara, argues that as opposed to Tisha B'Av, that is supposed to fall out on Shabbos, where we push it off till Sunday, because we do not want to commemorate a tragic day any earlier than we have to. Taanit Esther, which marks a happy occasion, we actually move back in the calendar, and we celebrate earlier than it's supposed to be. Taanit Esther this year is supposed to be on Shabbos, and instead we commemorate it on Thursday. Taanit Esther is therefore unique among the tragic fasts. It is a Yom Tzom, it's a day of fasting, it's a day of saying slichot, it's a day of engaging in tshuva, but it's also a happy day, one that is zichron nanes, where we recall the beginning of the victory over our enemies. It is actually a day perfectly positioned for conflicted feelings. But I actually think we could take this one step further. As opposed to the Mordechai, the Magid Mishnah, a Perush on the Rambam, explains that the reason why we commemorate Taanit Esther early, as opposed to the other tragic fasts, as opposed to Tisha B'Av that we would delay, is simply because there's no alternative. Taanit Esther must precede Purim. Purim is on Sunday. We cannot fast on Shabbat. We cannot fast Erev Shabbat. Therefore, we fast on Thursday. Taanit Esther then becomes a day of necessity, a day that we would ideally celebrate differently. Ideally, we would celebrate it immediately before Purim. But due to circumstances outside of our control, we have no choice but to fast on Thursday. Now, in truth, I think it could be argued that the entire miracle of Purim, the entire Purim story, is one simply of necessity. After the death of Haman, Esther approaches Achashverosh a second time. The first time was when she invited Achashverosh to bring Haman to come to her house for supper. The second time is after Achashverosh, it seems like, just gets jealous of Haman. He executes him, he hangs him off a tree. But there is still a decree that Haman had set in motion that all Jews will be killed. And so Esther approaches Achashverosh a second time. She begs of him to rescind the decree allowing for the extermination of all Jews. But Achashverosh informs her, maybe sadly, maybe he didn't really care, but he informs her that a decree, once issued, cannot be overturned. And so there is nothing Esther can do to prevent Haman's decree of allowing all the non-Jews to kill the Jews. Her people would still be murdered. And so in a last desperate attempt, Esther asks for a day earlier in the year to allow the Jewish people to preemptively kill all those who wish to harm them. And thankfully, Achashverosh grants her request. While there are those that claim that on Purim we celebrate genocide, we celebrate Jews murdering people, in truth, we are celebrating the victory of a defensive war that we wish we did not have to partake in. A victory of necessity. Perhaps that's the reason that before we begin the festival of Purim, we must first fast. We acknowledge the necessity of doing what we otherwise wish we hadn't needed to do. It was true then, and it is also true now. We wish the day would come where we need not enter hospitals to eliminate terrorists that are plotting the murder of innocent civilians, but we fight out of necessity. And so, just as Taanit Esther this year is on a Thursday out of necessity, we celebrate Purim in the midst of terrible events out of necessity. We will fast on Thursday. We will commemorate the war the Jews fought in Persia, and we will pray for the speedy end of the current war and the safe return of hostages to their family. But on Sunday, out of necessity, that no matter what our enemies do to us, they will not win, we will celebrate. We will gather together. We will share in the festivities of Purim, because Am Yisrael Chai V'Kayam.